Good evening. The hour of 6:30 p.m. having arrived, I will call to order this regular meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and channel 1302. The video is also posted on the city website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Anyone wishing to view a copy of the agenda and supporting materials will find it on the city website. To receive electronic copies of future agenda packets, please go to the homepage and subscribe to the city meetings email list. The public and other board members will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. Anyone who wishes to address the board is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room, make sure it is on, identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. As a reminder, the minute taker is participating remotely this evening. Board members, please make sure to turn on your microphone when speaking. If the minute taker is unable to hear, they will ask that you speak louder or turn your microphone on. Lastly, city staff wish to alert the public of a recurring scam. Please be aware of potential wire fraud communications that appear to be generated by the City of Keene that contains expensive wire payment instructions. Consider it suspect and call our office 603-352-5440. Do not correspond with the sender. Make sure to check the sender's email address and not just the display name. The city will always correspond using an official city email address, not Gmail, Yahoo, etc., and we will never ask for payment via a wire transfer. All right, our first item is minutes from the last meeting, or actually roll call.
Richard Clow,
Here.
Edward Guyot,
Here.
Zach Leroy,
Here.
Tad Schrantz,
Here.
Adam Burke,
Here.
Stephen Buckley,
Present.
Michael Zoll. Mr. Chairman, just as a point of, practice, for our first application this evening, Mr. Buckley was designated a voting member for it, and per the rules of procedure, he should continue as the voting member on that application until its resolution. So at that time, Mr. Burke will step off into the audience, and then we will bring Mr. Burke back for the second application.
All right, excellent. All right, then we will, at that point, we will do so. Thank you. All right, so now we can move on to previous meeting minutes. Any comments, questions, observations?
Steve Buckley, one correction, line 143, where it says Mr. Buckley replied, "This is correct." I think it should have read, Mr. Rennick replied, "This is correct." And other than that, I have no other corrections.
Anything from anyone else?
No, that was the only correction I saw as well.
All right, so I will take a motion to approve the minutes with that one correction. From somebody?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes of July 6, 2026.
That was Mr. Buckley,
I'll second.
And-
Guyot.
and Mr. Guyot seconded. All those in favor of approval of the minutes, say
Aye.
aye or raise a hand. You may vote even if you were not there. Okay. All right, so that was all unanimous. Thank you. All right, we will now move on to our first, or actually, is there any staff business prior? All right, we will move on to our first hearing.
Give a brief overview of the history of this application. So the public hearing was originally opened on June 1st, 2026. After receiving initial testimony during that hearing, the board voted to continue the application to July 6th, 2026. The applicant at that time made some revisions to the proposed location of the outdoor parking storage area for the buses. We then opened the public, or the the public hearing was still open, and we allowed the public to speak again at July 6th. The applicant then requested a continuance to the August meeting, as we only had a 3-member board present. Today at 5:30, we had a site visit at the property at 59 Optical Ave, where we had 9 members of the public, 2 city councilors, the applicants, and 6 board members present. We discussed the changes to the location, how the site's going to operate with the buses, and various questions related to the application were asked by the board and answered by the applicant. Let's see. That is all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right. So in terms of proceeding, we do not have to go through all of the complete reading of the variance, et cetera, but anything that is pertinent that is new to the board, plus maybe a brief recap, because we do have more members of the public here today. So I'll leave it to the applicant.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I'll certainly keep in mind, I know this is our third go-around with this, and everybody here has heard quite a bit about it, so I'll try to be as brief as I can. First of all, I'm George Hansel from H.C. Johnson Real Estate, representing the owner, J.P. Irving, LLC, who is the building property owner. To my left is Steve Rennick. He's representing STA, Student Transportation of America, who is the proposed tenant, and we are together seeking this variance to allow for a use that is not really contemplated in our LDC. And so we really have no choice but to come before this board and sort of argue this point. And so as far as new information, I do want to review the criteria. I will do that briefly in a minute, but for new information, I want to make sure that we're continuing to be respectful of responding to the feedback that we hear at the subsequent meetings. And so Steve did prepare quite a bit of information related to the idling of the buses, emissions standards that are actually very high for this type of bus and have evolved over time. And so if you'll indulge us, I would invite Steve to talk a little bit about the information he provided, and certainly provide it to the written copies to the board members and to the staff and whoever else would like to view it.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So one of the things that was brought up at the last couple of meetings was the idling of the school buses on the property. And we, STA has it's also governed by the state as well. There are, New Hampshire state laws limits the idling of a vehicle to 5 minutes within a 60-minute period, which means the buses cannot idle more than 5 minutes. There's a breakdown of that. The only exception would be in the wintertime, and I can go through that. I've handed a packet to each one of the board members as well, if you'd like to go over it. So you can idle your bus 10 minutes if less than 32 degrees, so minus 10 degrees, from 32 to minus 10 degrees, but that's where it stops. That's as far as you can idle at that point. You can only idle your bus a total maximum of 3 minutes on any day, on normal weather days. It's all outlined in the anti-idling policy that we have here at STA, and every one of our drivers has to sign this at the beginning of the year, and they are held to this. We also have a system in the buses, it's called a Zonar system, which tracks it. So if we see the buses sitting idle for any length of time, we can correct the problem right then and there. It's all on my computer, and I watch it I regulate it every morning, and the dispatcher will be also able to access that program and see who's idling and where we're idling as well. As far as the emissions, we have, one of the things I have made copies of is the engine types that we currently have in our school buses and the regulations for those. And then the modern diesel school bus emissions, you'll see that they go from 1983 to current, and they have increased the standards and the low emissions every year since. A school bus currently is one of the cleanest diesel engines burning that we burn. And that handed with the anti-idling policy, it just goes to show that we're not putting off nearly as much pollution as everyone thinks we do. I think the problem with the engine idling and everything that has been brought up from the public is the asphalt factory across the street from us, because they can smell that at any given moment. That is not the case with a diesel engine burning on a school bus. They are clean engines. Every one of them is a certified clean engine bus, and this is actually all the information. I'm sure you don't want me to go through page by page.
No.
I didn't think so. So I'm willing to, I have extra copies if the public would like to view them as well. I didn't hand them out because I didn't know if I was supposed to. But I'm also open to any questions that you might have in regards to any of the information I handed out. I also think by moving the location of the buses from the back of the property to the front of the property is going to cut down any noise or any pollution that's back by the tree line. It's all going to be out front now towards basically facing 101.
All right. Do members of the board have any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, I would just, if there aren't any questions, I would just like to quickly go through.
Yes,
Just very
okay,
quickly go through
certainly.
that stuff. So very quickly, the first criteria, granting a variance would not be contrary to public interest. It's really important for the board members to realize that we are coming before you for a couple of concrete reasons. One, this use is not contemplated in the LDC, so we really have no choice but to come before you. Secondly, the reason this use fits so perfectly in this site is because it has what this use needs without any modification. We don't have any sort of site plan modifications planned for this. The inside of the building, it all exists there now. It's been sitting vacant, and so this is really a nice drop-in use that will allow this building to continue to operate and be economically viable without having major impacts on the community. I wanted to just point out, too, the process. I know it's taken 3 meetings for us to get here, which is regrettable. I don't like to take up people's time and the public's time doing this, but I think that was a valuable exercise in that it did allow us to make some very reasonable accommodations. Our first attempt at this had the buses much, much closer to the residential area. We have moved them literally as far away as we can, and that's not an easy thing. That wasn't something that really came to us when we were devising this project, because it's not perfectly practical for operationally on the site, and trying to accomplish what we want to accomplish, which is to divide up the building and the site for multiple users. But we made an accommodation. We made a very substantial accommodation. Secondly, some new information to me. We've been responding as we go. The modification of the bus routes to make sure that every bus coming in and out of that site is going to be to the west, making sure that we, again, provide as much of a buffer from this residential area as possible. The other thing I would just want the board members to think of is the historic use of this property and the surrounding properties. There was a UPS delivery place across the street. We could put an industrial use, a manufacturing use in there that would have deliveries many times a day, backing trucks up to that loading dock without any sort of approval, or that was contemplated when this zone was devised. We're not doing that. I actually think this use is much less intense than some of the uses that could go there by right. The other thing I would impart upon the board is just, you can't hold this particular use to a much, much higher standard than the uses that are allowed by right in the area. So I understand that having more activity on the site can cause some things that would happen there, but is the activity that we're proposing substantially worse than something that was contemplated and allowed by right? We're not trying to force something in here that should go somewhere else. In the zoning code, the use was not considered, so there is no other place. We have to, any place that we choose in the city, we're going to have to come to get a variance. So I just want you to keep that in mind as we deliberate. And finally, I just want to say that we appreciate the public input, and I speak on behalf of the owner. I work on behalf of the owner, and no matter what happens tonight, we're working to fill that building with multiple tenants. I think we're going to be very successful at that, and we want to be good neighbors, and we want to keep the dialogue going. So if there are concerns, questions, things that we can do better, I know that this owner is committed to doing that. Thank you.
Yes, questions?
Yes, Steve Buckley, one question. I just want to clarify the bus route and departure plan. So
Yes.
we were at the site visit, and I think you said all buses will depart and always turn left on Optical and will either head to the other section of Optical and go another direction into the city, or will head down to Route 101, and that no buses will come up onto the hill that takes you directly to the area of apparently greater concern amongst those residents as a Marlboro. I just want to clarify, that is the plan.
That is correct. So when you come out of the parking lot, we will only be allowed to take a left turn. I have actually changed the bus routes themselves, that there will be no bus traffic going down beyond the second driveway, unless it's going to the back to be repaired by the maintenance stores. But there'll be no buses going up the hill at any time during the day or night. There will be, I have eliminated all bus traffic on the Marlborough Street extension, just to make it better for all the neighbors involved.
And just to be clear, that the other entrance to Optical is further up towards the city, and there's actually a little island in the middle of Optical when you can turn left and right. We're talking about from that point down, there will be no bus traffic on Marlboro. Is that correct?
From PC Connections, from where you take the left to go onto Eastern Ave?
Well, yeah, I'm a little bit unfamiliar with some of the names
Okay.
of the streets, but I was just in there
So
today.
if you come out of the Optical Ave property, if we take a left, it will bring us to 101.
Right,
If you take a right, it will bring us to the Marlborough Street. The bus stops have now been moved to the end of the Marlborough Street extension and Optical, Eastern Ave, right there.
Okay.
So no traffic could be coming down or going up the Marlborough Street extension at all going forward.
and I would just note for staff, we'll probably need some care in if there is such a condition attached, to compose that as accurately as possible.
I would recommend that the board, if they so choose to approve this evening, condition that no bus traffic either leaving from or heading to the site utilize Marlborough Street Extension. So any potential future user would also be subject to that same agreement.
And that will also hold true with the staff, with the exception of my staff that live on the Marlborough Street extension. They'll be the only ones traveling to the building, but no other staff will be allowed to go on the Marlborough Street extension because it would be a heavier traffic in that residential zone. So, and I only have 2 staff members that live on the Marlborough Street extension.
Okay, that's all the questions I had.
Thank you.
And just very quickly, Mr. Chairman, again, I'm going to try to be quick, but, if the variance, just to cover our bases, if the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed because this proposed use is not contemplated, but it is consistent with other uses that are in the district. Granting the variance would do substantial justice because it would allow this use that's not contemplated to find a location that seems consistent with its intensity and everything like that. And it would not hold this use in particularly to a higher standard than the ones that are contemplated in this zoning district. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. I think, I don't think it will have much of an impact on the surrounding properties, and I think the accommodations that we've made have even further separated that possibility. Wanted to be clear that at the first meeting, there was some confusion, probably mostly on my part, about the trips per day versus trips per hour. And for any of the board members that weren't here, I want to clear that up. I might have misspoke. I said the 100 trips per day was the threshold that traffic engineers hold for a substantial impact to a surrounding intersection. It is 100 trips per hour, and so we are not going to come anywhere near that with any of the activities that we're proposing. The unnecessary hardship, this site is uniquely suited to this type of purpose. It's built as a high bay garage with a high garage door that exists right now so that it can be used for this. It has already paved unused space for the storage requirement that we are asking, that is necessary. So there would be no exterior modifications to the site to accommodate this use. It is uniquely suited to this purpose. And I believe that it will preserve the fact that we don't have to modify things at all for this use. It will preserve the neighborhood character and the other criteria that are listed here under the hardship. The proposed use is reasonable because this, it really is consistent with other uses that are allowed. You have to think about an industrial use, manufacturing, research and development. The building was purpose-built for research or for a manufacturer who was having kind of heavy equipment and things like that. And I really do believe that it's consistent. If the criteria in subparagraph A are not established, an unnecessary hardship will be deemed to exist if and only if, owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, the property cannot be reasonably used in a strict conformance with the ordinance. So I've been the one responsible for breaking up this building and trying to figure out how to get it occupied again and working again. And I can tell you it is very difficult. I mean, I think all of us understand that the bigger firms, big manufacturing companies are fewer than maybe they have been in the past. Those types of occupants that need all of this space and that kind of space are few and far between now. So when this zoning district was contemplated, I think we had more firms that were single occupancy for a building. The times we're in now, you're going to see a lot more necessity to have multi-tenant buildings with multiple types of uses in them. And I think that this is allowing the property owner to really modernize the way that the building's being used in a fair and just way. And that's all I've got for you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I did have one question just to confirm this, and then, what's the window when you would be starting up the buses in the morning?
Currently, the first bus that rolls out is our out-of-town bus, the Harrisville bus, and that starts right around 6:30. And then, so 6:30 to 8:45-ish is when all the buses start rolling back into the lot. And then they go out at 2 o'clock, and they're done between 4 and 5:15 at the latest.
And
With
at
the
that,
exception of night sports. But we're currently where we're located at the Jonathan Daniels School out on Maple Ave. If a bus comes in at night, it just pulls in, shuts down, and we don't back in at all. We don't back in after 9 o'clock.
so at 6:30, about how many buses would you say would be firing up?
2.
2?
Yeah. Most of the other buses that run in Keene, because we service mainly the Keene area, they start around 7 o'clock.
Okay. Mr. Schrantz, did you have a question?
I think you covered my question with some of the conditions that we were contemplating.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. All right. If there are no other questions, then I thank you, and you gentlemen can take notes as you hear what comes up next.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So now, now we're going to have comments, and remember, this is comments. If there happen to be questions in your comments, we hope that the applicant will be making notes because he will have a chance to address them afterwards. But we're going to try and keep all the comments as comments and then the response all as one unit as opposed to breaking it up too much. All right. So, so any people who are here who would like to have opposed public comments, raise your hand and you can come and identify yourself. And also acknowledge that anything that if you've had statements before this board, it is part of the public record also. So you don't necessarily have to restate what you said before, because we do have to take what you said before as part of our deliberations.
My name's Ken Lane, last name spelled Laine. I own and live at 551 Marlborough Street. Another concern that I didn't mention before was senior citizen age. We're elderly, some of us, including myself. We have some serious health issues, major operations, heart attacks, etc. Our immune systems have been compromised. It won't take much air pollution or noise pollution to ruin our day and maybe even harm us. The area that they're going to service the bus at, the garage area, and thank you for the thing today, when they back out of there, they're going to be backing up toward our house, which is just a few feet away. The alarms are going to be on. As they accelerate away, they'll leave a large plume of exhaust. So I would assume, and I'm sure, that there will be ongoing traffic in and out of that garage area every day, because the bus is going to need attention. And I don't think they're going to let a mechanic sit there all day long without having something to do. So those are my main concerns. And I guess all we can do now is hope and pray that our quality of life as we have it won't be taken away. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, who would like to speak next? Just raise your hand. I'll put my glasses on. I was goofed up before. Certainly.
Green light means it's on, right? My name's Penny Bell. I live at 511 Marlborough Street, and much of my family lives at 505, 508, 511, and 550 Marlborough Street. So, as I've told you, this is kind of personal, but I have no problems with bus companies. I do see this bus company every single day because I drive out to Jonathan Daniels every single day. But what I'd like to know is this repair facility going to be just for the buses that are there? They have 80 buses in Jaffrey, I believe. I don't know if that's true. I know you can't answer my question, but that's a consideration that should be thought of and looked at and answered. Also, they're going to make K through 5 students walk down to, so say they live down past 550, which would be the end of the street. They're going to make them walk down to Eastern Ave. Is that safe? I don't think we asked for that. Maybe that's a punishment. I don't know. Because I have, small grandchildren that live in that area that will have to walk down there. Also, if you approve this, does this open the door for me to have a repair facility on 101? Am I going to have the door open for me to have a repair facility on the dead-end part of Marlborough Street? I have enough acreage, can I? Is that the kind of door you want to open? Is there enough parking there? I see the parking out on Jonathan Daniels. Seems like they're taking up a lot more space there than what they're allowing, or what they say they're going to allow for buses. Are they going to take the rest of the green space out there? And again, who's going to monitor this? What if they double in size? Who's going to monitor that? If you agree to this, can they double their size? Can they bring all those buses from Jaffrey, 80 buses? What kind of impact will that have? I don't live directly behind it, but I have people that do. All my neighbors who are here, they do. It will affect them. They walk their dogs, their children play not in the street, but along the street. I have tenants who work for the bus company at both houses. So, and some of them are family. So I have nothing against the bus company. nothing against the community. However, you want to make a change that he stated it. They're asking to be here because they have to be here. Do they have to be? And do you have to approve it? Is it in the best interest of everyone? I guess that's all I have to say. I've already said enough.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
All right, who would like to go next?
May I make another comment?
If no one else is up, we do have someone coming up.
Is this still on?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So Nora Travis, 528 Marlborough Street. I spoke last time about the significant negative health effects of diesel exhaust, mentioning that I am a scientist who studies this. I've done a lot of work looking at biodiesel as an alternative fuel, which is actually less toxic than diesel. I have a question if the applicant will be using biodiesel as an alternative. I also have a question, since we're hearing about clean diesel engines, I'd like to know more specifics because that can mean anything. Are the engines post-2017 model? Those are the cleanest diesel engines that are on the market. Do the diesel buses have a selective catalytic reduction or diesel particulate filters, which is the best emissions reduction technology? It's kind of being implied these are the cleanest diesel buses that could be available, but I don't have any evidence to suggest that that is the case. And I think just looking at the public that we have here with all the concerns that were raised last time, that's a reasonable question to ask. There's a really big difference between, 1998 engines and post-2017 engines. Regarding the idling, I appreciate the clarification and the commitment to having onboard computer regulation of the idling. I know that was also mentioned as a concern, and I can understand why from the public. There are laws that prohibit idling, but I would suggest those laws I just read a notice from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, and basically they send out a recommendation to remind fleet managers not to idle. So it's essentially up to the fleet managers not to idle. It doesn't look like there's a big, robust enforcement response. So if the zoning is changed, then that becomes like the city's decision to change that zoning. So where are the complaints going to go? Are they going to go to DES or are they going to come to the city? Because it's going to be a city decision to change that zoning and impact the air quality. Worse than the idling is actually really the startup of these buses, because in the mornings they're going to be cold, right? And so every day it's going to be a dirty startup. That's when most of the emissions occur. So we'll have like a sequence of all these different timing depending on what school the fleet goes out to. And based on that timing, you're just going to have a cold engine start and do those puffs. And that's the laws of physics. That's going to happen. And that stuff's just going to float. And people are going to have to breathe that in. I think that's more of a health concern than the concern about idling or not idling. It's every day there's going to be this startup time period for an hour or so, generating an excess amount of emissions. The one health effect I did not mention during my last testimony, but I'm going to mention it now, is that diesel exhaust actually is classified as carcinogenic to humans. It causes lung cancer in humans, and there's strong evidence suggesting it causes bladder cancer in humans. But the designation of carcinogen was made in 2012 by the International Agency for Research on Cancer. California also asserts that it's a carcinogen, and I know there's going to be a question of, are kids right on the buses, so how bad could it be? It's a carcinogen. If this were in the workplace, it would be heavily regulated. It's not in the workplace, and therefore, because it's a transportation loophole, this is how it just happens to happen, because EPA does not regulate the exposure or the air inside the bus. It only regulates the chemicals that someone could be exposed to in the workplace, or OSHA technically does that, not EPA. So we can't figure all that out. I'm just explaining that having the 38 buses is going to generate a lot of diesel particulate matter, and it's something that cannot be undone. And it'll be this way completely going forward. And the quality of life can't be returned once this decision is made. The businesses that are already there have done a lot of tree clearing. That's their right? That's their property. So they have cleared out a lot of vegetation and trees that might have acted as a green barrier to some of that migration of air pollution. But those are gone now because they can do what they want on their property. So I really strongly still would ask the board to vote against the variance. My expertise is in this area, and the other gentleman mentioned about age and vulnerability. I mentioned in my last testimony, this is an economically disadvantaged census tract in Keene. And I think it will absolutely impact this neighborhood negatively, both for air quality and for noise and for quality of life. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Randy Filio. I live on Ashwood Street in Keene. I have been a city councilor here in Keene for 27 years, and I am currently the chairman of the Planning Licenses and Development Committee for the city of Keene. I'm also a lifetime Keene resident. I'm here tonight representing my constituents from the Marlborough Street neighborhood abutting this proposed project. As chairman of the Planning Licenses and Development Committee, I wholeheartedly support economic development in Keene. I also agree the bus company needs an appropriate site for the buses. However, I feel this site isn't the appropriate site for many of the reasons you've heard tonight and for reasons you've heard at the previous meetings where constituents have spoken and neighbors have spoken. Article 6.3.5 of our zoning regulations does not permit this type of use on this property, and for good reason. Keene's comprehensive master plan strongly emphasizes the importance of safe, quiet, vibrant, walkable neighborhoods. This proposal not only doesn't add to that, it actually detracts from that, going against the city's master plan. It's disappointing that the neighbors must speak out in defense of their neighborhood by simply asking the Keene zoning laws be upheld. It's the way it is, but the burden, in me, is unfair that the neighbors must defend the zoning that the city applies right now. Keene city government has created zoning for a reason, and it should never, ever be taken lightly for any variance. And in my opinion, should only be granted for dire situations or emergencies. This proposal is neither. It's simply convenient for the proposer. There is no hardship. Deterioration of Keene's neighborhoods is rapidly becoming a serious problem. Personally, as a city councilor, I frequently meet with various neighborhood groups struggling with multiple issues affecting their neighborhoods and their quality of life. And as I mentioned, as a citizen who was born and raised here, That greatly concerns me. I appreciate the time and effort this board has put into this issue, and I personally realize the difficulty making these types of decisions can be. I know it's not easy, and I know the pressure. I've dealt with it for years, but you have to do the right thing for the neighborhoods. Most importantly, follow the master plan, do the right thing for the neighborhoods. That's the most important part of our master plan. If you haven't read it, I suggest you do. But once again, the burden tonight shouldn't be on the neighbors simply asking for their zoning to be upheld. Because as I stated, zoning variances should be granted only for the most serious of requests. And this simply isn't one of them. They have proven no hardship. In my opinion, you must vote no on this request. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, do we have other folks here who wish to speak in opposition? That gentleman over there.
My name is Shane Maxfield. I live at 534 Marlborough Street. Those of us that went down to the site survey, the walk around the site, we had a chance to walk around the parking lot. If we're talking 30 or 40 buses, each bus is in the vicinity of 39, 40 feet long. That's just shy of half the width of that parking lot. So if you can imagine 30 or 40 buses jammed in that parking lot, even on the end where they have proposed to move them, that's going to be really, really, really tight. So you can imagine the potential three-ring circus every morning and every afternoon when they're trying to maneuver 30 or 40 buses that are almost half the width of that parking lot. So is a waiver of this ordinance going to necessitate at a later point an attempt to pave over a bunch of that green space to make it less tight in there? Who knows? There's almost certainly going to be a lot of backing up done. Every single bus that is going to go in that maintenance bay is going to have to back up to get in or back up to get out. There's no getting around it because there's no pass-through. The backup alarms on those buses are designed to be shrill and annoying and break through all the other noise so that everybody's aware that they're backing up. We're talking in the vicinity of 90 to 110 decibels, which is equivalent to a rock concert, according to Google. That's going to happen every time a bus goes in that maintenance bay. And it's going to happen a lot in the parking lot when they're trying to fit 30 or 40 buses in that parking lot. And that's just one more thing to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, Mark Bowden. I live at 547 Marlborough Street, so I'm in a butter of this property also. And I don't think I'm really talking as a NIMBY. I think I'm talking as somebody who both personally and professionally has invested a lot in Keene. My initial reaction when I heard about this is Keene's got to be able to do better than putting a bus depot in a residential neighborhood where it's going to contribute undeniably, even with a responsible operator, to air and noise pollution. I mean, there's no doubt that that's going to have an impact on our communities. We are in a state right now that is doing nothing to protect our air, and we have to do that here. That's our responsibility, is to take care of ourselves, because we don't have a state that's doing that for us anymore. And in terms of the whole idling thing, 5 minutes maximum, that's for one bus. What do you do when there's 30 buses idling at the same time? What's the limit to that, that goes into it? So I really do encourage people to take into account both, the neighborhood, everybody who lives there and what they go through, plus, the air in this community. I mean, once you give on this, what's going to stop you from doing a variance for another one that maybe is in your backyard? And the next one that's approached. Is that Keene's future? Is bus depots? We have to be better than that. So thank you. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Yes.
I am Dustin Clark. I live at 543 Marlborough Street. I understand that the applicant has revised the proposal relocating the bus parking area, and they limit the repairs to one bus at a time inside the building, and stating that repairs will generally occur during the business hours with occasional Saturday work. I appreciate those changes because they appear intended to reduce impacts. But even with those revisions, however, I remain concerned that the applicant has not met the legal standards required for a use variance. A use variance is an extraordinary remedy. It is not enough to show that this property is a convenient location for this business, or that impacts may be manageable. The applicant must demonstrate for all legal criteria has been satisfied. My primary concern is the unnecessary hardship. I have not seen evidence that this property cannot reasonably be used for one of the uses already permitted in the industrial park district. The applicant explains why this business would like to operate here, but I have not seen evidence that the zoning ordinance prevents any reasonable use of this property. I'm also concerned about the precedent this approval could set. The Land Development Code does not currently list Transportation Operations Center as a permitted use in this district. If the city believes that transportation depot should be allowed in the industrial park district, the question should be considered through a public amendment to the zoning ordinance, where the community and the planning board can evaluate whether use is appropriate through the district. A variance should not become a substitute for that legislative process. I also asked the board to consider whether the record contains sufficient evidence regarding the operational impacts of this use. Although fueling is not proposed and repairs will occur indoors, this is still a transportation depot with bus storage, dispatch operations, and regular bus movements. I have not seen detailed analysis regarding traffic patterns, early morning departures, noise associated with fleet operations, or cumulative effect of adding this to existing industrial activity in the area. My request is simply that the board apply the statutory standards carefully and require the applicant to meet its burden with evidence. If those standards have not fully met, then the variance should be denied. Also, if the applicant has committed to one bus at a time, no refueling, repairs only during business hours, would those become binding conditions of approval? Otherwise, future owner or operator might argue that they are not enforceable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Certainly.
So I am Ken Bergeron. I have lived at 558 Marble Street for 56 years. Over the course of moving down there and the present time, I've seen nothing but degrading situations. Also, my kids used to play in the field, fish in the pond down there. Some kids still do. The sight of seeing multiple buses down there is just a further deterrence to the neighborhood. I might add that I have never, and not meaning this, I have never heard the applicant volunteer to bring 12 or 15 buses down there and start them up in the presence of the zoning board to prove that they are not noisy. The applicant also stated that he thinks the situation would be better if we move the buses to the west of the original site. If some zoning board members would go down and listen to what it sounds like, maybe there would be a further negative situation for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? All right, so at this point, I would ask if there happens to be anybody here in favor of this, other than the applicant. Okay, we have one person over there.
Hi, my name is Laura Grubel. I live at 23 Sparrow Street in Keene, New Hampshire. I am also a bus driver, and I will start off saying I was not forced to be here. I was willingly to come. I also live in Tanglewood, which is right behind where the buses are parked. I have several signatures from other homeowners in the park. We do not smell the buses, nor do we hear the buses at all from where they are parked. So I wrote this. It says, the Tanglewood Mobile Home Park located behind the Jonathan Daniels. I am submitting this statement to confirm that the school buses parked near our community have not created any disturbance. Residents have not experienced fumes, noises, or any concerns related to the buses. Additional several buses approved to remain within the park have not generated any complaints. I will collect signatures from neighbors who wish to affirm these observations. Please feel free to contact me with any questions. And then I got the signatures if you would like to have this.
We could enter that
Yes.
with staff.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Okay, so at this point, I would like to ask the applicant to come up, and hopefully you took plenty of notes so you can address many more of these questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Again, George Hansel with H.C. Johnson representing the owner. We did take some notes, and Steve, feel free to jump in, because I think you've got a handle on some of this stuff more than I do. So regarding the health issues and the air pollution, we have supplied quite a bit of information related to that. And I think, one thing for folks to consider here is that the buses are actually being held to a higher standard as far as pollution goes compared to just regular 18-wheelers that come in from anywhere all over the country to deliver products and goods to this site. And so if they can feel better about the situation, these are New Hampshire buses with a local company where those standards can be upheld. That also is true for the alarms backing out of the garage. At the site visit, you saw the proposed garage door is literally right next to the loading dock there. And so any delivery that comes to the building is someone's going to be backing a truck up there. It's not dissimilar from one of these buses going in and out of the garage, probably less than a similar use industrial user in this space. So just for the route modifications for the kids on the Marlborough Street extension, Steve, do you want to talk about that?
So I modified the route modification for the Marlborough Street extension. I brought it back to what it was a couple of years ago when it was, when the bus routes were driven by First Student. Because at the first couple of meetings, people were concerned about the bus traffic going up and down Marlborough Street, the Marlborough Street extension. So I'm trying to work with everybody. So by going back to what it used to be prior to STA, when we took over last year with STA, we kept all the routes the same, thinking everything was okay. And evidently, it's been pointed out that they're concerned about the traffic going up and down Marlborough Street extension. So I'm trying to eliminate as much of that because it's a kid-friendly street, and we're aware of that. So that's why I've instructed no buses will be going down there to avoid it, especially at that hour of the morning. People are going to be trying to get out to go to work and stuff like that, work, school, and everything like that. So we've put them back to where they originally were, which is the end of the street down by Eastern Ave. It's not to punish any of the neighbors up in the area. Like I said, I have a couple of employees that live on that road as well. That's the only reason that we're making the modification, is because we want to eliminate as much traffic between the buses and the employees traveling on that road. They won't be allowed to do that. There's another, a couple of things. For 9 days straight, I brought 2 buses down to the Optical Ave property at different times during the day. And I ran the buses. I put the backup beepers on, and I did everything that we would normally do. Now, 2 buses is very different than 20 buses, I understand that. But I don't know, like, I did it just to see what the noise was. We brought the buses there, and I was up on the top of the hill. I'll call it the top of the hill for reference points. The noise that we could hear from being out front between the traffic on 101 and the backup beepers at the top of the hill, you could barely hear the backup alarms. It's state law, they have to be 90 decibels, minimum of 90 decibels. There's nothing we can do about that. We can't disconnect them. I know we had the same concern when we went to the Jonathan Daniels property. And we've talked to the neighbors in Jonathan Daniels. We've been there a year and we've not had any problems. Do you want me to go through my list?
Why don't I
or you want me
keep
to
going down and I'll tap you
Okay.
in a second.
Okay.
But just don't want to miss anything.
Okay.
But, regarding Ms. Bell's comment about will this use grow, we're not proposing any site changes. And if you pay attention to the application that I submitted, I actually submitted a very detailed application. More so than a lot of applications. Sometimes there is a little game you can play where you don't put specific numbers in there and you don't do this stuff. You know, we're not playing that game. We're laying all of our cards on the table here because we recognize that this is something that's important. And so our application, if it's approved, will be held to that application, as well as any conditions that this board decides to put on that. And to Ms. Bell's point about who enforces this, it is a complaint-driven system. So if someone complains to the city about that there's something going on there that wasn't approved or wasn't allowed, the city will investigate that. They'll compare it to the documentation and that we've submitted and what was approved, and then an enforcement action could take place after that. The affects the biodiesel and more about the diesel engine stuff, I think Steve is better equipped to answer that.
So the biodiesel, we currently fuel, we don't fuel on property. We fuel all the buses have gas carts. We go to all the gas stations around town. So if they have biodiesel at those stations, we use them. There are no biodiesel stations that I am aware of. But we do fuel at Big Deal. We do fuel on West Street at any of those gas stations. Per the contract in Keene, we cannot have any buses older than 7 years old. So all of the current buses that we have are 2020s and newer. And that goes for the, we call them minnows, those are the special needs vans, but all of our large buses are 2021s and newer. But the oldest bus in our fleet right now is a van that we borrowed, and that is at its 7-year mark, so that left last week. And that's per the Keene contract. We can't have any buses older than 7 years.
And one other comment I wanted to make about Ms. Travis's, from what I heard Ms. Travis saying, was related to, you know, the emissions and potentially reducing emissions. You know, one of the important things I think and it just naturally occurred when Steve and his company were looking at places to put this location, they're trying to get it close to the cluster of the population where their roots are, so that they can limit the amount of non-productive back and forth driving that would be required. Right now, I think you have a facility in Westmoreland and...
Currently, our buses are parked at the Jonathan Daniels Preschool on Maple Ave, and our repair facility is up in Westmoreland. We're trying to get it all centralized. So currently, STA services all of Keene, Marlboro, Harrisville, Sullivan, Nelson, and Marlow. So by being in Keene, we can just spread out going down 101 and get to the main highways. We won't be traveling as much through Keene.
So
the
is it-
city streets of Keene.
So is it fair to say, Steve, that with this, with this move to a more highly populated city or location, centralizing that location, you're going to be reducing the number of miles that these diesel buses will be traveling in our whole community?
Correct.
Right? I just wanted to make that point. So tree clearing on the site, I'm not familiar. I don't know where the tree clearing comment might have come from. The only thing I can think of, and again, I didn't see this or whatever, we are doing fit up for another tenant, and they might have taken down some trees in the back of the building to put equipment on, but that's like my best guess. I haven't seen or heard about any tree clearing going on there. There definitely wasn't any tree clearing between the building and the residences or anything that I'm aware of, so I'm not sure where that came from. And then, let's see. The bus sizes, there was a question about or a comment about the bus sizes. There are various size buses. I just wanted to make that clear. It's not all 40-foot buses or whatever.
Correct.
And the tight parking on site, we're not proposing any site modifications. We've done that analysis and determined that with the number of buses that will be operating there, they can move around utilizing the existing pavement, so that's good. Go ahead.
I believe it was Ms. Bell that brought up the Jaffrey terminal. Jaffrey has their own terminal. We do no repairs for Jaffrey buses. They will not be over here at all. It will strictly be just the Keene buses that are repaired at the facility. Again, no fueling will be done on Optical Ave, and no bus washing will be done there either. We go to Key Road Car Wash and wash the buses in the open bay. So the Jaffrey terminal, which has 45 buses, they're maintained over there. Peterborough has 48 buses, they're maintained over in Peterborough. So none of those buses will be brought over here for service at all. It'll just be the Keene buses.
And then finally, just comments about the hardship. I do think this is a unique property. It was purpose-built. The building and everything were purpose-built for a company and their needs at the time. It's divided up. I know that your purview isn't for the inside of the building, but it's divided up between sort of high bay garage space, which is what we're talking about here, with really low ceiling sort of manufacturing space and some other difficultly accessible space in the back. And so there is, the way that the site has been used in the past is just unlikely to occur in Keene, less likely to occur in Keene than it is now. And I see a hardship in using it with the strict zoning use regulations that exist today. Thank you.
Any questions from the board? All right, thank
I had
you
a quick
very
question.
much.
I did
Oh,
have a
yes.
quick question, I'm sorry. You mentioned First Student. Where did they or do they operate out of?
First Student is in Swansea.
Okay.
Right behind, on Whittemore Farm Road.
Okay,
Down
so you took
behind-
the Keene contract from them?
We
and-
took the Keene
so-
contract. They have
okay.
the Monadnock contract.
Right. I was just curious about whether another space had vacated because you took.
No, because
but
they have
they're
the
still
Monadnock
operation- I get it.
contract. So, and the STA contract is for 3 years, and the Monadnock contract is for 3 years. So currently, we're locked into, First Student has Monadnock, Keene has SAU 29, STA has SAU 29 contracts.
Understood. Thank you.
I just have one question, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, Steve Buckley. Is Mr. Rennick or Mr. Hansel have any information, other than what's been incidentally offered previously, about the UPS activity and which building they were in, and when that activity was ongoing? Because we've had some information about that, but I don't know really clear what was the UPS activity there at that site, and the particular parcel that was involved, if you know.
It was across the road and actually close, basically, so if you're looking out the garage that we're talking about, the garage door that we're talking about, it was straight across the road there. As far as the level of activity, I just remember it anecdotally. I don't have any information on that.
I can actually jump in there because I was a roommate with somebody who worked there. And it was, before they built the Criff Road, it was the
Distribution
depot.
center.
It was the distribution center for this area. So that's where they had all their trucks and they sorted the parcels there.
Right. So if you've ever been out to their, it's not as big a building as their current facility, but it operated in a similar way from what I can tell.
Well, I guess I'd have a question for Evan about that, but we can wait, not for the applicant per se. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
All right, so let us, do we want to have some discussion with Evan, ask him a few questions first, and then we can go into
I do have a few
deliberations?
questions for Evan, because I'm trying to kind of wrestle with understanding this light industrial district and what appears to be many activities which aren't completely consistent with the definition of light industrial. You know, the zoning ordinance says light industrial is for the manufacture, fabrication, processing, reduction, and/or destruction of any article, substance, or commodity of any or any other treatment thereof in such a manner as to change the form, character, and/or appearance where such activities are conducted wholly within the enclosed building. That's the definition. And I think you've made pretty clear from your original presentation back in June that a transportation center just is not a permitted use anywhere in the city of Keene, but that there are a number of places in the city where there are automobile dealerships where they have, in effect, a transportation center and maintenance operations. And I think you described that in some instances as being an accessory use. So I'm trying to kind of understand those parameters which are in the zoning ordinance, and the fact that CNS has not insignificant warehouse in this area, and apparently UPS operated a significant transportation center of some part, and how those activities came into existence, and either preceded this kind of apparent limited nature of the zoning ordinance, because having been on a zoning ordinance modification in my town, this was a common thing that towns and cities wanted to do. They want to have light industrial research centers, and that's kind of a desire that towns and cities wanted to have. So maybe these changes came about, but there were other pre-existing activities which seem inconsistent with it. So I'm just trying to wrestle with understanding those dynamics and how this creates kind of a situation which we have to now address with this particular application and the fact that there is no transportation center use in the city of Keene. I know that's a lot to throw at you, but I'm just trying to better understand the context, these contextual questions which I'm struggling with.
Yeah, so I don't have dates for like when things changed and stuff like that. But it's really obvious to me when you look at the permitted uses in the industrial park district that as this district stands today, the intent was, like you said, for research and development, office, daycare, data center, industrial light, and the light industrial permitted use is defining characteristic is that all activity shall take place inside. All the other permitted uses in this zoning district effectively have that same characteristic, that the principal function will be taking place inside of a building. Part of the reasons why I made the determination that this specific use in this location needed a variance was because fundamentally the activity for this use was going to be taking place outside, not inside. And so that is why we're all here this evening. To contrast that to the industrial zoning district, there is a significant number of uses in the industrial zoning district that are permitted for outdoor activity, such as warehouse and distribution, outdoor storage yard, things like that, that if this was zoned industrial, I really can only speculate, but I might have been able to come up with a way to say that, yeah, okay, this is a mix of use and it is outdoor, but the industrial zone allows for heavy industry, which is for outdoor industrial activity. A bus depot would probably better fit there, kind of in between office and outdoor storage and heavy equipment storage and things like that. That is not the case in industrial park. Like I previously just said, all of the uses are designed to be inside some structure. I don't know when this part of the community was probably zoned industrial and then was rezoned to industrial park. The UPS warehouse and distribution facility, I found site plans for that early 70s, 80s, kind of, when it was permitted. The zoning ordinance was very different back then to what it is today. The LDC was adopted in 2021, and there was a significant amount of consolidation and change and stuff like that. However, my understanding is that the zoning map, more or less as we know it today, has not been fundamentally updated since the 1970s.
Well, just to also just understand, the CNS warehouse, and frankly, I was trying to find it when I was driving around and I couldn't find it. And that's just because I'm unfamiliar with this part of the city. It's also in the light industrial, and isn't that of recent origin, or maybe I'm misunderstanding CNS and the warehouse that they have currently?
That's their sales. It is not their warehouse.
Oh, okay.
It's
Just
a
sales.
sales.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, it's offices. Yep.
Okay, did I answer your question?
Yes, I think you did the best of your ability.
Thank you.
It just leads us to the difficulty of trying to understand, are we as a board, is it our job to now say, yes, we have a much more refined, perhaps stringent list of permitted uses in the light industrial district, in the research areas, and that was a change brought about by the 2021 land use code amendments.
Yeah, I don't believe industrial park was created with the LDC. I believe it's earlier than that. But it's very clear from the purpose statement for the industrial park district, and like I said before, that this was a very narrowly targeted area for very specific type of economic activity. It really, I always picture it in my mind, it was a way to draw in corporate headquarters, where you have large office buildings that are pushed back significantly from Optical Ave. There's large green space requirements in industrial park, which is just about the antithesis of our regular industrial zoning district, which allows for 80% or greater lot coverage, where industrial park, I think, only allows like 20% lot coverage. Bear with me a second, I can get the exact. Yeah, 25, okay, so it does allow a total of 70% impervious, but only 25% max building, whereas industrial is 80% and 80%. So you only need to leave 20% as green space, and you can basically pave the rest. So it was really designed for a car-centric corporate headquarter office type of use.
And again, the linchpin of your judgment in the zoning assessment that led us to be in the application process we're in was that the activity was not confined to the inside of the buildings. It had a significant exterior activity level.
That's correct. I would argue the maintenance and the office would be accessory uses to the principal exterior storage, transportation, depot component of the business operation.
Let me ask a hypothetical. What if they built a facility that would house all of the buses in a building? Would that have qualified as an indoor activity, or would it have still been a problematic transportation center which had too much exterior activity and impact on the neighborhood?
It's a hard question to answer as a
It's a hypothetical.
As a hypothetical.
Yeah.
Our own public works facility stores just about all of their equipment inside, so and that's only down the street. It would certainly reduce impacts related to the pollution could be controlled better, the noise would be mitigated somewhat. Sort of speculating at this point here. We all know data centers are loud, and that's a permitted use in this district. I don't know. I would really, I'd have to be.
I'll withdraw the question. I guess
Thank you,
the
yeah.
last thing I just want to comment or make a statement, not to throw aspersions, but the buses are currently parked on Maple Ave right next to a mobile home park. And I don't know why that wasn't required some kind of permission, and whether that was a permitted use. I would speculate that because it was considered a school use, that somehow they were exempt under governmental uses. And I don't know if that's what came about, but certainly that use is right next to a residential area, and I think has probably much more impact because it's on the same level, and you can see the buses. And so, but that doesn't really answer the question we're faced with, but it is a fair comment.
Yeah, and I think considering the contract is with the SAU, which is a governmental entity, taking place on school property, that's probably the decision that was made with that. That might have been before I was zoning administrator, so I don't know how that shook out, which I'm sorry to say. But that would be my sort of knee-jerk analysis of why they're currently sort of temporarily housed at Maple Ave.
All right, any further? Yes. All right, then let us close the public hearing officially and go into deliberations, please. So let's go through the criteria, starting with granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest.
Mr. Chairman, do you think it would be worthwhile for us to take a straw poll, just as whether the members here today are prepared to either approve or disapprove this application? I just wanted to see if that's a useful exercise, or do we prefer to just go through the criteria, the 5 criteria, as a prelude to making a decision?
I have no problem with that.
I don't know what the other board members think about that.
I'm Tad Schrantz. I'm curious about the purpose of that.
Well, I just want to get a feel for where the board wants to go with this thing. If we are inclined to say no, then I think we all have to address the criteria with it taking that into account. If we're inclined to say no, or yes, then we have to take a different approach. I'm more than happy to do that, just to take this step by step of all the criteria individually, but I just thought perhaps it'd be useful to try a straw poll. I'm not going to push it. I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, I know I'm comfortable moving towards some sort of resolution, since we've already had 2 other meetings and going into criteria and that sort of thing. But what do other people think?
Mr. Chairman, personally, I'd like to go through each of the criteria. It helps the thought process for me. And I'd like to hear others' viewpoints on those criteria as we move through them. And then we can take it from there.
And then we
with
can,
a
so
vote.
more like we can discuss the criteria without it being,
I'll withdraw the suggestion.
okay. All right, well, then let's look at the first criteria to determine how we might feel about it. So granting the variance would not be contrary to public interest. What sort of thoughts do people have on that?
Well, the sine qua non of this whole addressing here is that it's an outdoor activity, which is inconsistent with the research light industrial, then it's not consistent with the public, it is contrary to the general public interest of the district, even though there's this underlying activities that have been going on for many years that are consistent with their proposing, but the zoning has changed, and I think part of our obligation is to uphold that part of the zoning. So I again, it seems to be the outdoor storage is the real issue. I don't know what others think, but that seems to be the real problem here.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Ed.
Certainly agree with Stephen there. However, listening to city staff, this type of use up until now hasn't been contemplated in the zoning regulations. And it could be this type of use, it could be a different type of use in the future. So we're in a unique situation where we have to consider this new proposed use. How does it fit into the existing regulations that apparently, or the thought process at that time, did not give consideration to that type of use? Is that a fair assessment of where we are with this?
It's very yes, it's very uncharted. There's, I'm not sure that this is, anyone's ever come before any of the boards with a transportation thing of that type. Yes, Mr. Schrantz.
Yeah, Ted Schrantz. I think I concur with Mr. Buckley's assessment. There's been a lot of information provided, but it certainly seems like, based on even most recent conversations and input that we've received, that the industrial zone is more applicable to this type of use versus the zone that this is actually in currently. And because of that reason, I think I concur that it's not in the public interest.
Okay. Any?
I find the problem there, though, is regardless, you still have to go through some type of variance, regardless where you are.
Yep.
And you put them in a position to not be able to find a place that is an alternative for them one way or the other. I do feel for the neighbors. To me, that's the crux. To me, it's almost when we had this discussion about the casino, for example, there was no better place for it. There was not a good place for it in anybody's mind. However, where else are you going to put it? It's necessary, it's needed. Nobody did think about it long-term in the zoning or planning process. So therefore, it's laid in our laps to figure out a solution going forward.
Okay, so a little discussion on if the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. Again, my feeling for this is the ordinance doesn't even mention anything of this nature. How could it's sort of, it's like, presenting something in Latin and expecting somebody who speaks Greek to understand it. It's just not.
Well, again, I think the problem we face, Mr. Chairman, this is Steve Buckley, if indeed, and again, just read the definition of light industrial, if indeed everything is supposed to be conducted wholly within an enclosed building, then this is not within the spirit of the language of what is defined as a light industrial use. And we have to some degree, ignore the fact that there seems to be significant outdoor activities. Although, strike that. I did drive around the Timken building, the other buildings that are there, Samson Worldwide, a number of other activities. There's an image manufacturing company, others. They're all inside. I mean, they have some externalities, but everything seems to be taking inside. So, you know, the current, even though UPS may have been different, it does appear to be that was the idea, and having an external transportation site, I guess I'm hard pressed to say that's within the spirit of the light industrial use as defined in the ordinance.
Mr. Buckley, may I ask, why are you restricting your analysis to the light industrial?
Because that's the ordinance that we're dealing with.
But, well, we have an industrial park zoning, but are we gonna just restrict it solely to the light industrial aspect and not any of the rest? I'm just curious.
I'm
Maybe I missed that part.
gonna turn to Evan. I guess this is a very specific part of the zoning ordinance, light industrial. So unless I'm misreading the ordinance here.
So light industrial is a permitted use in the zoning ordinance. And then industrial park is the zoning district that the property is located in. If it would be helpful, I can read the purpose statement in the zoning ordinance for that zoning district.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, please.
That was included in the packet.
I believe I put it in the staff report. So the
I
industrial.
believe it's on page 24, just for everyone's reference.
Yeah, the industrial park district is intended to provide for relatively low-intensity manufacturing and research and development firms that are employee-intensive, clean in nature, and promote an attractive industrial park environment. Service operations and sales activities are excluded from this district, except for minor sales that may be accessory to the primary use. All uses in this district shall have access, shall utilize city water and sewer.
And so you have commercial uses, including office, research, daycare center, I think you've already done this before, data center, industrial light, and infrastructure uses. And those are what is permitted. So I guess to answer your question, you know, I feel that we're constrained by these permitted areas of activity within the industrial park area, and it has to be one of these things, which is of commercial or institutional or industrial uses. And those are limited data center and light industrial. So even though theoretically a data center could be much more intensive activity, but that would have a different impact. It would have an impact on water and power as opposed to, you know, outdoor
Noise,
storage.
pollution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I get to what I feel like it's difficult to say that the spirit of the ordinance observed. I don't think it is observed in that context.
Well, I guess that's my point, is that there's nothing to compare it to. It's completely out of all, and there's no way to go to industrial either. If this was an industrial, we still would have to go through the same process.
Well, what I would just say is that I think that it goes to the hardship requirement. I think legitimately, you know, no zoning ordinance can adequately address all potential uses of land. Towns and cities could certainly exclude nuclear power plants. They could say that, we're not going to allow those. But you're always going to have these questions of whether particular uses are allowed, and how do you define what are the allowed uses? I mean, you know, Keene's zoning ordinance is a zoning ordinance which is, if the use is not listed as permitted, it's excluded. And that's how the zoning ordinance is interpreted. So if you don't say we have a transportation center, it's not an allowed use. You have to get a use variance. That's how the ordinance is to be interpreted. So we're stuck with the fact that it's not listed, therefore it's prohibited.
All right, let's move on to number 4. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished.
Mr. Chairman, I think we
Yes.
skipped number 3.
Oh, granting the variance would do substantial justice. Oh, I thought I'd started to mention it, and then we backtracked a little bit. Sorry. So granting the variance would do substantial justice.
Well, when you look at this, Steve Buckley, you're balancing the burden on the applicant versus the burden that is imposed on the public at large for protecting the zoning regulations. I actually think this waves in their favor. You know, they are really on the horns of a dilemma. They really do not have any reasonable place to put this activity. So I think you could argue substantial justice would be done to this particular applicant, given this lack of this as a permitted use. And I think, you know, if you had to sit down and rewrite the zoning ordinance and/or the master plan, you might want to think, hey, we are going to need these transportation centers, and this is something we should think about putting in there. And maybe it's an omission that should be addressed. So I would tend to say there's, you know, I would weigh that the burden is more on the applicant here, and therefore substantial justice would be done by granting the variance to them. Doesn't help them with the other criteria, but.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts? All right, now we can move on to number 4. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. This is one of those things, it would almost depend on what time, you know, if it was 6:45 and you were going to show a house to somebody 6:45 a.m., they might not be terribly thrilled if they've got the rumbling of, you know, a bunch of buses. But then the rest of the time, so I don't know.
But yet, people want to buy houses on Arch Street all day long, and you can't get through there for an hour in the middle of the afternoon on a school day, right?
Mhm.
So, you know, it's in the eye of the beholder and what you
Right.
want to do, right?
Right, yes.
I think at this point, I do want to recognize that the applicant has tried to make a lot of accommodations based on impacts from the abutters with regards to relocating the buses and not having any bus traffic on Marlborough Street. And so I think that lies in their favor. To
Absolutely.
listen to the concerns and then try to address those concerns. You know, I think that there's, something's going to go in that building, right? And there is going to be truck traffic and noise that's created from those uses. So I struggle with this question as to, it's a matter of degree, I think, in my opinion on this one, as to, you know, will there be an impact? Well, certainly, but there will be an impact no matter what use goes in there. And so I think that, I believe my opinion is that it won't be negatively impacted more than any other use that goes in there.
Yeah, when I'm doing something like this, I'm just sitting there trying to, you know, okay, I own one of the houses there, and I can tell you just personally, you can ask my wife, that if I don't sleep well, I'm a grumpy person, and that's earlier than my alarm goes off. Not by a lot, but it's early enough. And just I can tell you personally, just maybe the anxiety of knowing that something like that might, you know, not every day, but there might be certain days where it's really hot and I have to have the windows open, and maybe between a little bit of a rumbling and stuff like that, you know, I don't get quite the sleep I expected. So I don't know. You know, that's a little bit how I'm viewing that they can't really, rightfully so, they can't change their hours of operation, but, you know, that's not quite your normal hours of operation. You know, having those buses going out at 6:30, 6:45, 7. Most of the other uses we're talking about for that, you know, you'd be expecting 8 o'clock would be the earliest. So that's kind of how I'm comparing that element of it is, and they can't change it. That's necessity for them to get out to the you know, the routes.
And in that same vein, what I struggle with is this is happening one way or the other. Where in town it happens, it has to happen. These buses need to bring kids to school. We can sit there and debate the environmental impact and all those other things. Those buses are going to be operating and driving kids to school until there's an alternative way of doing it, and whenever that happens. Where it happens, where it's centralized is the question. Is there
Yep.
another place for it? I don't know. Is that our position? I don't know, but at this point, that's the only option that is on the table.
I would just add, Steve Buckley, on diminution to surrounding properties. Two things. A great deal of evidence was presented by the abutters about the asphalt plant. And you cannot put the asphalt plant around the neck of this applicant and say that's your problem. It's just not reasonable. So with due respect, asphalt plant might be a problem, but it's not their problem as the applicant. The other thing I would say is, I think it significantly diminishes the potential harm from diesel exhaust fumes, because these are all clean diesel buses, and they're certified as such. So I think those two things weigh for, I don't believe there would be, the values surrounding properties would be diminished because of those two factors.
Good. Thank you. Any other thoughts on that one?
I just add one,
Yes.
you know, we kind of alluded to it, but a hot button item across the country, and even in the state right now, is data centers. If a data center wanted to go in there, they could without any pushback. And
Right.
the noise, the pollution that comes from them, it's a million times worse than the worst case scenario of these buses being there. You know, the other thing is school buses, they run, it's only 180 days of school a year.
Mm-hmm.
It's half the time. You put in an Amazon fulfillment center, they're gonna be running 7 days a week, 1,000 trucks going in and out.
Those are all, Steve Buckley, those are fair comments. The problem is, we don't write the laws. That's up to the city council and city staff advising the city council. We have to implement the laws as they're written. And whoever it was, they put data centers in here. So that's the way it is. And it wouldn't come to us if it was a data center.
Right.
Okay.
I'm just saying that as
That
far
was
as
a really
understanding the
good
full
point.
impact of
Yep.
what isn't on the table.
Yep. All right, unnecessary hardship. Owing to special conditions of the property which distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property, and the proposed use is a reasonable one. We can take that little piece at a time, not the whole thing. I see it as, it's awkward because it's got special conditions in terms of where it is, in terms of how it's been zoned, which limits its uses to things that are not necessarily as pertinent today as they were, you know, the 1970s, 80s, that sort of thing, or throwing a data center in, which is a little bit newer. But on the flip side, the property also has the position of it's a flat property, and then you've got the hill to the east, and the prevailing, you know, climate, winds, et cetera, drive anything that's happening from the west into those houses. So there's a little bit of the topography, i.e. the location, works for it and against it. Because, you know, putting all the, you know, fumes and sound and everything against those people who are living there is the negative, but the fact that the property just as itself is in a no man's land of, you know, yes, we should get the zoning fixed a little bit for this because it's so limiting. So I actually see both sides of it.
Steve Buck, I think it's hard to say, if you look at the language, you have to make the following finding for hardship. There's no fair and substantial relationship that exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance and the specific application of that provision to the property. If we determine that Evan's right, which I think is a reasonable conclusion, that outdoor activities of this nature are inconsistent with light industrial park, then the proposed use is not, is inconsistent with these general public purposes as applied to this property. And if you make that finding, then there's no hardship. Now, it might cry out that we need to have this as a use someplace, but maybe it wouldn't be in this zone. Maybe it'd be in another industrial zone, a transportation center. That's where I'm hung up. I don't think you can get to the hardship without, violating this concept that the general public purpose is to confine the activities of a research light industrial nature to inside the building, and parking buses outside goes against that.
Any other thoughts on that? And I do want to thank the audience for sitting through all of this, so. And the second part of that is the proposed use, is it a reasonable one? So I don't know if that's a separate, you would say that that would be separated from the first part?
On other applicants, we have separated that next step. I don't think the use is unreasonable for where it is in this. However, as Mr. Buckley's pointed out to us in such an astute way, it's not consistent with the regulations as written today. So it creates it's a built-in conflict for us.
Yep. Any? Yeah. Yes, wish there was some sort of definitive, this is how we should think of it, but that's why we do this. Okay, is there any other thing anyone else on the board wants to say in relation to what we would be doing, deliberating in terms of the criteria?
Like I said, back in June when we first had the hearing, the applicant said that there was no other place to do this. And I was like, there's a ton of commercial space. Commercial real estate is hurting. And I did a lot of research after that meeting, and they're right. There's no place that would accommodate this directly. There's plenty of spaces if they did want to invest $500,000 to $1 million reconfiguring the building, there's space for that. So I don't know if that falls under your definition of hardship or not, but like I said, this has to happen somewhere. They're in a, what are we, 3 weeks away from school starting? And I don't know if that defines hardship. This is always the hardest question we always have to face on every application.
Yep.
But that's just my 2 cents on that part. I was fully prepared to kind of just like move on and say, go find another place after the last meeting. But after doing more research, I agree that there is no other place to do that.
Well, Steve Buckley just would point out that the applicant said they're functioning currently in Maple Ave. They want to have the maintenance activity, which is up in Walpole right now, come down in the same area, and that creates efficiencies and allows them to provide better service to the school district and the residents of the city of Keene. So that's, you have to take into account, well, that's saying, well, it's not like I can't do what I need to do. I would just like to do it more efficiently. And for the SAU, there'd be a better service, and to the students in the city, there'd be better services. But is that enough to say that this creates a sufficient hardship to allow, because of the lack of other places to go? Because they are functioning, but they're not functioning as efficiently as they would like to. That seemed to be the point they originally made.
Well, I mean, they not be just what they like to. They might not be sustainable enough to make it a viable business, and therefore cost the whole community more money, and therefore.
Right, and in the worst case scenario, they can't afford the contract they have with the city SAU, and they have to ask for more money because it costs more to run the bus operation for the city schools, and that affects all the taxpayers. So certainly, that's a potential outcome of saying no in this particular setting.
Right.
All right, well, I think we have discussed that. If we were to entertain a motion with any sort of conditions, there had been additional discussion about possibly altering those conditions. And I do have to say that for whatever reason, this computer has decided to just give me a black screen. So I don't have a complete set of what the conditions were or anything like that. So if somebody wants to.
Talking about the ones that staff recommended?
Yes.
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 Should we,
From the staff report in June?
Mr. Chairman, should we discuss each one individually or just?
Well, we're going to, we have to make a motion first about it, and then we can vote on each criteria. Thank you. Probably turn on just as you walk away. Yeah.
Evan, do you have a recommendation on how we phrase the motion?
So for the, I quickly workshopped one related to the not utilizing Marlborough Street extension. So my suggested language for that would be bus traffic leaving from and returning to either 59 Optical Ave or the property shall not utilize the Marlborough Street extension. So that, in my mind, if the proposed navigation of the bus is leaving the site, they'll always turn left to go down Optical Ave and then either take the right to head towards Marlborough Street or the left to go to 101. And then if the intent is to, for wherever points abroad a bus is located and it is returning to the property, it will utilize either Optical Ave or 101, and it'll not come down the extension. I don't want to put the applicant in a situation in the future where if they have a child with special mobility challenges or where they require transportation to effectively be constrained by this condition. Like if they need to take a specially equipped bus to somebody who lives on Marlborough Street extension, they should be able to do that without constantly having to call the city and be like, yep, we're doing that route again. And it also, it makes it so all of the residents understand that the bus is going not for the convenience of cutting through Marlborough Street extension to make it back to 59 Optical. It's going down there for a specific reason, to serve a student. So that's why I don't want to do it as a blanket prohibition on Marlborough Street.
Right.
The intention of the navigation, I think, is really important for that. All vehicle maintenance shall be conducted indoors, I think is really straightforward. I've also got a spill prevention and mitigation plan, which it sounded like was very straightforward for the applicant. Community development staff just wants to have a copy of that on file with this use. Screening was something that we discussed at the site visit. I know the applicant is hesitant to be subject to everything in 9.4 of the Land Development Code, which is really designed for new parking lots or doubling the size of parking lots. So the regulation basically says the expansion of a parking lot is subject to these regulations. If the expansion results in an increase in the number of parking spaces by 100%, the entire parking lot needs to be brought into compliance with the current regulations. So by requiring section 9.4 for an existing parking lot would be a unique decision targeted to this specific use. There may be a middle ground here where evergreens that provide adequate screening from Optical Ave of the bus parking area may achieve the result while giving the applicant some flexibility there. Ultimately, that'll be your decision. I've got something in here, no more than 10 vehicles shall idle at a time. As the applicant has explained, their normal operation is much fewer than that. So the board may wish to pick a number or omit that condition. I would like to keep in the prior to occupancy, the tenant/owner shall meet with Public Works and the industrial pretreatment coordinator to identify any required upgrades for wastewater handling necessitated by the use. And that's just targeted to the inside maintenance. So like oil changes, spillage, if a grease trap or some kind of separator is going to be required to accommodate that use, that should be installed prior to operation. All required building, fire, and operational permits shall be obtained. That's a little redundant because they're going to be required regardless. Vehicle idling shall not be permitted before 7 a.m. was also put in here. 7 a.m. is also when the noise ordinance ends for the evening. That would impact the applicant, as we've since learned. So we may want to say no idling prior to 6:30. I don't know. And then any additional noise and vibration mitigation, that was just kind of a catch-all. What else do I have? And then, yeah, the leaving from and returning to indoor, all maintenance inside, and then the spill prevention plan that I already talked about. That's all I have for suggested conditions.
So based on those suggestions, does anyone have comments in terms of refining or omitting?
Well, are we going to go through the exercise of proposing a motion to approve with conditions and then say no, and then make another motion to say why we're saying no? Is that where we're going?
I would be more than happy to see what people think about how we should proceed with that. I mean, do we want to do, I don't know what the procedure would be or the order. I know what you're saying about that, yeah.
Well, again, Steve Buck, we're not, from what we just did in terms of going through the criteria, they haven't met the criteria, at least all five.
Right.
All five of us.
Right.
Or actually, three concurring people to say that they're prepared to say yes. So I think we could just vote on the criteria and then have a motion to deny if that's where we end
Okay.
up after we go through the criteria voting, and then say the reasons why we're saying no.
Okay.
If that's where we end up. And I think that's where we are.
I think we can go that route. That makes sense to me. We go through the criteria and then determine whether we add conditions or we're voting to deny. Okay. All right, so let us, we're going to move to the criteria voting on the So number one, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. All those who agree with that, say aye. All right, all those opposed?
No.
No. So that was unanimously no. If the variance are granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. All those in favor? All those opposed?
No.
That was unanimous no. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. All those in favor?
I would find in favor on the applicant on this
Okay,
one.
that was all unanimous yes. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. All those in favor? And that is, and I'm opposed, so all in favor except for Chair Clough, who's opposed. 5A, unnecessary hardship owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area. Denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. So all those in favor of that statement?
Question, clarification, if I vote in favor of that, then I assume that there is hardship on the applicant?
Yes. So, in favor? That was Mr. Leroy and Mr. Schrantz. Opposed? Buckley and Guyot and Clough. And the proposed use is a reasonable one. All those in favor of that? And that's a unanimous all in favor. All right, so in the main motion, at this point, we would be voting to deny. Yes, yes, please.
I'd be happy to make a motion. Mr. Chairman, I would move that we, for application ZBA 26-5, the proposed student transportation center at 59 Optical Ave, the board finds that the criteria necessary to be granted variance are not satisfied, and therefore the request for the use variance is denied. And with regards to Section 6.3.5 of the City of Keene zoning ordinance.
Thank you. All in favor of that? And if you voted it, yes, that's unanimous. Thank you. All right. So,
So
finding
we
a
need
finding
findings
of fact. Yes,
And
please.
it's going to take a little bit, but, I think that really it comes down to the conclusion, and I'm just going to say this without trying to formulate it into a detailed motion, but it really comes down to the fact that as described in the zoning ordinance, in the industrial park zone, a proposed light industrial use shall have its activities housed entirely within buildings on the property. And the fact of the matter is that this proposed bus transportation center would have a significant outdoor activity impact inconsistent with the requirements of the zoning ordinance. And that was evident from the testimony both by the applicant and as described in the staff report. And hopefully that is clear enough as a motion to then formulate, and I would move that that be the finding of fact by the board.
And a second for that, please? Mr. Guyot. All those in favor of the finding of fact motion? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. All right, thank you all very much. You are all free to go now. I would like to take maybe a 5-minute recess, and then we will hear our second application. Okay. So at this point.
No, my parents are here. They went outside. They're like, we have a 5-minute break. We're gonna go and come back before it's our turn.
All right, we are resuming the meeting, and we are inviting Mr. Burke to rejoin us. And thank you ever so much, Mr. Buckley. You are relaxed.
You can stay and participate in the deliberation. You just can't vote.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not getting out that easy.
All right, moving on to ZBA 26-8.
You can come up and sit down. So how it's going to go is the chair will read the legal language for the application into the record.
Okay.
I'll do my staff report.
Okay.
And then you will give your presentation, kind of color anything that I might have missed.
Okay.
And then go through all 5 variance criteria and explain how the application meets them.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, ZBA 26-8 petitioner Hillary Harris, on behalf of the owners Patrick and Brittany Allen, requests a variance for the property located at 31 Mill Road, tax map number 239-031-000-000, and is in the rural district. The petitioner is proposing to replace the existing entryway and shed with a connector to a new garage with an accessory dwelling unit in the front setback per Article 3.1.2 of the zoning regulations. Hearing from staff first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Evan Clements, Planner and Zoning Administrator. Subject property is an existing 1.5 acre parcel located on the western side of Mill Road at the very end of the road. The property contains an existing approximately 1,300 square foot single-family residence built in 1941, a driveway, and associated site improvements for single-family residential. The residence is located almost entirely within the 50-foot front yard setback. The property is characterized by an area of steep slopes to the rear of the residence, as well as wetlands and surface water protection buffer areas. Lastly, approximately 2/3 of the parcel is subject to a National Grid utility easement. The purpose of this application is to seek a variance to permit an attached garage addition to be located 34 feet from the front property line, where 50 feet is normally required. The proposed garage addition is approximately 800 square feet in size and will be attached to the western facade of the existing residence. The proposed garage is intended for storage on the first floor and a future accessory dwelling unit on the second floor. And just to clarify, the ADU would be permitted by right and does not require any special approval from the zoning board and is not subject to this application. Surrounding uses and the zoning district, the property is completely surrounded by the rural residential zoning district with single-family residential located to the northeast and west, with undeveloped land to the south. Let's see. The staff report includes the dimensions and siting requirements for the rural district, as well as the purpose statement. I am going to go into some detail regarding the Surface Water Protection Overlay District Ordinance because that ordinance does apply notably to this application. So the Surface Water Protection Overlay Ordinance, commonly referred to as a wetland buffer, wetland protection ordinance, requires at face value that 75 feet in the rural zoning district, it requires 75 feet of separation from the edge of a delineated wetland to just about any common development. There are a couple permitted uses allowed within this buffer zone. Garages with ADUs are not one of them. However, the Surface Water Protection Ordinance was adopted in 2013 with some exceptions carved out for properties that existed prior to the adoption of this ordinance. This parcel was in existence prior to the ordinance, and therefore there are some allowances under that, this exception. So it's not feasible to place the structure on a portion of the lot located outside the wetland buffer. The structure is set back as far as reasonably possible from the edge of the wetland. During construction, appropriate erosion control measures are installed. Any disturbance to the surrounding buffer is repaired and restored upon completion of construction. And then the ordinance also sort of requires that in the rural district that a 30-foot buffer at least still attempt to be achieved as much as practically possible. The applicant's site plan shows the proposed garage being 29 feet 11 inches from the edge of wetland. And the ordinance also gives the zoning administrator the authority to make a reasonable determination on that. And so I have decided, and hopefully you all agree with me, that that single inch is de minimis. And then lastly, any alteration of a surface water is made in accordance with all applicable state and federal laws, administrative rules, and regulations, which will not be applicable as far as I'm aware to this application, as again, we're going to stay 30 feet away from the edge of the delineated wetland. That is just about all I had. Mr. Buckley did raise a question related to the road classification of Mill Road. And I was able to do some preliminary research in confirming that, as far as I can tell, the portion of Mill Road that provides frontage and access to this parcel is still Class 5. There may be a portion of Mill Road that extends beyond the driveway of the property that may have since been converted to Class 6. That I don't have that answer definitively at this moment. There is a procedure where getting a building permit on a Class 6 road, there is a process articulated in statute independent of the zoning board application this evening, that if it is, for whatever reason, determined to be necessary, can be addressed at a later date without intervention from the zoning board. That being said, I'm fairly confident that that's not necessary in this case. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Evan?
I've got a question about the site plan, but it may be more appropriate to ask the applicant about that. I'm not sure if Evan's in a position to respond to that. It has to do with the wetlands, and I'm on page 57 of the packet you distributed, and it may just be the way that it's depicted, but it looks like the house and everything is within the wetlands buffer area, if in the highlighted red section.
That's correct.
And so how are we 30 feet or 29 feet and 11 inches outside of that?
So we're not, so that buffer is the 75-foot wetland buffer that is, that would be applied if this was a newly created lot and would be new construction. Well, it would be applied. Realistically speaking, the planning board probably wouldn't approve a subdivision with this parcel because the entire buildable area of it is within that 75-foot wetland buffer. This lot predates the adoption of the wetland ordinance, so that's where the exceptions are allowed. So basically, it's saying you can build within the buffer, provided you do these things. And one of the things the ordinance wants is to try to still maintain 30 feet from the edge of the wetland. And that's where they're coming in at 29 feet, 11 inches.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, then I invite the applicant, and again, thank you for being patient on the previous application.
Good evening. My name is Brittany Allen. My husband and I own the property at 31 Mill Road in the rural district. Tonight, we're asking for a variance to build an addition to our home, a new garage with an accessory dwelling unit above it for my parents, connected to the house by a new mudroom. As part of the project, we'd be removing our existing porch and mudroom entry, as well as a few sheds that are on the property. The addition would sit within the 50-foot setback required in the rural district. The reason for that comes down to the lot itself, as Evan described. It's a triangular 1.5-acre parcel, and most of it is not buildable. A wetland and its 75-foot buffer bisect the property. A 250-foot wide National Grid easement cuts through the rest, and a septic and leach tank further constrain the options. Once you apply the required setbacks on top of those constraints, there's no area left on the property, including along the road, that's buildable without a variance. The location we're proposing follows the layout of the existing house. It connects at one existing door that enters the home and will serve as the new link to the new garage. The proposed location of the garage is similar to the setback of the house while maintaining an approximately 30-foot buffer from the wetlands. Our architect, Hillary Harris, who is unable to be here this evening, prepared a full written application addressing each of the 5 criteria the board considers for a variance under law, and city staff have reviewed the project as well. I'd like to walk through each of those criteria briefly, and I'm glad to answer whatever questions the board has. The first criteria, that it is not contrary to the public interest. This addition is residential, just like the home it is attached to, and like the rest of the homes on this road. The setback at issue was imposed after the principal structure was constructed. The addition encroaches less within the road setback than the existing building. It doesn't add traffic, block light, or air to anyone nearby, and doesn't change how the neighborhood looks or functions. It's simply more living space on a property that's already residential. As you can see on the proposed site plan, the addition sits relative to the road and neighboring lots. Criterion 2, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. The 50-foot setback exists to keep density low, protect traffic safety, and preserve the open rural look of the street. Our road is a dead end with very little traffic. The addition would sit back farther than our existing home, and we're not adding any new use of city water or sewer. The purpose behind the setback is still being met, even if the exact number is not. Again, you can see on the proposed site plan that the new structure is set back further from the road than the existing home. Criterion 3, substantial justice. This is really about weighing the harm to us against the benefit to the public. As the survey plan and GIS parcel map show, once you account for the wetland buffer and the National Grid easement, there's no buildable area left anywhere on this lot, not even along the road. Denying the variance does not protect any public interest, it just prevents us from making reasonable improvements to our home. On the proposed site plan, again, you will see the wetland buffer and easement and how little of the lot is left over. Criterion 4, surrounding property values would not be diminished. Garages and accessory dwelling units like this are common in the rural district and specifically allowed by the ordinance. A well-built, well-designed addition like this is more likely to support property values nearby than to hurt them. As you can see in the packet, the 3D rendering shows the design matches the style and quality of the existing home. Number 5, unnecessary hardship. This comes down to 2 things: the shape and constraints of our lot and the fixed layout of our existing home. First, the lot itself is irregular, triangular parcel with the wetland buffer and easement, meaning there is no setback, no meaningful buildable area anywhere on it once you apply the standard setbacks. That is not true of most lots in the rural district, but it is specific to our lot. If you see the proposed site plan, you'll notice the core visual for our hardship argument. Second, the house itself limits where the addition can connect. There is an existing exterior of the home, and the photo shows what's being removed in order to make way for a connector. On the interior, there's a photo attached of that as well. where the actual door is in our kitchen. The placement of this door and the windows alongside the house rule out any other connection point with a much larger renovation. The location we're proposing isn't preference, it's really the only place on our lot that it could go. For all of these reasons, we believe the addition is a reasonable use of our property, consistent with what the rural district already allows, and the only way for us to make use of this lot given its constraints. I thank you for your time this evening. We believe this addition fits the character of our neighborhood, will not create any new burden on the road or our neighbors, and is really the only way for us to use our lot given its constraints. We'd appreciate the board's approval and happy to answer any other questions.
Do we have any questions for the applicant? Okay, well, thank you very much. We may have something up. There's,
I just wanted to clarify the road classification question. I apologize, I didn't notice this before. You guys are served by city water. So we're definitely maintaining the water lines underneath that road. So I'm incredibly confident that it's not Class 6.
Yeah, we have a fire hydrant like directly across the street from our house.
Yeah, I'm seeing it on the survey and on our city GIS that the water lines are right there, so.
all right. Thank you very much. I do not see anyone here in opposition. Do I have anyone who wants to speak up who is in favor of it? Not necessary. Okay, so we can, I think, close the public hearing and go into deliberations. So let's go through the criteria. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. How do people feel about that? I think it sounds like it's not going to be contrary to public interest. I mean, trying to do everything possible to increase some housing, and with so many constraints on the property and the odd shape of the property, there's nothing there where public interest would be impacted. Okay. If the variance are granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. Pretty much agree on that one, too?
Yeah, I think the only challenge we're running into is that they're going to be inside the setback, but they're already, the house currently is, and it's not impacting the setback any further, and so.
Right.
I think that the proposed solution is not creating any, it's respecting the spirit of the ordinance.
Granting the variance would do substantial justice. I think that one makes sense. I mean, if we were to deny it, I don't know who would be benefiting in any way. There's no weighing, the private versus the public. I think that is doing justice.
And it would be detrimental to the homeowners
Mm-hmm.
to deny that.
If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. I think that would be a very true statement.
Yeah, I would think to the contrary, they'd probably be enhanced potentially by adding the garage and by improving the property.
And unnecessary hardship. Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to this property. Again, it has a lot of special irregular shape, all sorts of setback issues in terms of whether it's, wetlands or the road or stuff like that.
So while this is typically one of our more challenging areas to cut through, this particular situation has so many dynamics associated with the shape of the lot, the easement from the utility company, the wetland water preservation areas, on and on it goes. I think it's clearly falls within the criteria we usually struggle with. So it's
one of the easier times on it. And the proposed use is a reasonable one. adding housing, adding storage, making everything a little bit, better. Okay. All right, I will entertain a motion to approve. If someone would like to.
I just gotta find it.
Right. It's the only thing I did print.
Make a motion to approve. Motion to approve ZBA 26-8 to permit an attached garage addition to be located at 34 feet from the front property line where 50 feet is normally required per section 3.1.2 of the zoning regulations as shown in the application, and supporting materials received on July 9th, 2026 with no conditions.
All right, and a second?
I'll second that.
All right, so Mr. Burke and then Mr. Leroy seconded it. All right, going through the criterion. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. All those in favor? Are you in favor?
Yes, sir.
That was unanimous. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. All those in favor? Granting the variance would do substantial justice. All those in favor? If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. All those in favor? Unnecessary hardship owing to the special condition of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area. Denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. All in favor? And the proposed use is a reasonable one. All those in favor? And on the main motion of approving ZBA 26-8, all those in favor? And would somebody like to do a stab at a finding of fact? Let me see. That we would find that, yeah.
Yeah, so we find that the application is approved based on the challenges of the site itself, including the wetlands and the easement, as well as the existing condition of the home being within the front setback. And so because of those findings, we believe we decided that the application should be approved.
Sounds good. Do I have a second? All right, and all those in favor of the, all right, findings of fact. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank
you. We might have to have a little. Yeah. All right, all right. Do we have any new business? Anything to?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
No new business, just something, one of the gentlemen in the audience mentioned that for some of our quieter board members, it can be challenging to hear you all the way in the back of the room. So if you could, if you're soft-spoken, try to make a little more effort to get a little closer to the microphone would be greatly appreciated.
Let us know who that is. We know whether we need to speak up or not. It's going to be Tad and Ed.
All right, there we go.
But if we are speaking into the microphone, there's a projection back there?
There are speakers,
There
yes.
are speakers
Oh, okay.
back
Yes,
there.
All right.
yes.
He also noted that you were very easy to hear, Steve.
I've got a loud mouth, I know.
All right, then I adjourn the meeting. Thank you.